Remember that awful feeling back in 2008? You know that pity your stomach feeling when the markets were just in free fall? And it seemed like everybody's retirement savings were just, poof, gone overnight.
Yeah, I do.
That wasn't the first time that's happened, and unfortunately, history tells us it probably won't be the last.
It's true. And it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
It is. Those crashes, they often feel like they come out of nowhere, like a bolt out of the blue.
Huh?
But they follow some kind of predictable pattern. It's weird.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. It's like the anatomy of a market crash.
Right.
We've got a treasure trove of insights here from economist and broadcaster Linda Yu
Okay.
from her book, The Great Crashes. She takes us through a whole century of financial turmoil,
Yeah.
from 1929 to the dot-com bubble and the 2008 crisis, to help us understand why these things happen and if we can learn anything from them.
That's a long time, a whole century. 100 years of crashes.
Yeah.
Well, Linda Yu, she breaks down each crash into 3 different phases, starting with what she calls euphoria. Think about the Roaring '20s before the 1929 crash.
Okay.
The dot-com frenzy of the late '90s.
Oh, yeah.
Or even the housing bubble leading up to 2008. It's that this time is different feeling, right?
Yeah, it's that, that sort of feeling that the rules of economics don't apply anymore.
Right.
Yeah, and we just get so caught up in the excitement.
Absolutely.
Whether it's, the allure of some new technology or just that belief that house prices always go up.
Exactly. And that kind of thinking, that creates this dangerous disconnect from reality. For example, during the dot-com bubble,
Yeah.
investors were pouring money into companies with no real business model, just the promise of being the next big thing.
The next big thing.
You remember Pets.com?
Oh, yeah. The sock puppet.
Yes. They were burning through so much cash, tons of it on Super Bowl ads with the sock puppet.
Yeah.
I mean, while their core business was struggling to even make ends meet. Crazy.
That's pretty wild. And then, of course, the bubble bursts.
Right.
And we enter the second phase, the bust.
Yeah.
Panic sets in. Values plummet. People start scrambling to try to salvage what's left.
It's that roller coaster moment.
Oh, yeah.
You reach the peak,
Ugh.
and the only way from there is down.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah.
Like a straight shot down.
It's that collective gasp you hear, like, right before the drop.
Yeah, exactly. And then comes that long and often really painful aftermath, the third phase. This is where the role of credibility, especially for those in charge, becomes so crucial.
Yeah, because it's not just about having, the right policies in place.
Right.
It's about inspiring confidence. Think about FDR's fireside chats during the Great Depression.
Okay.
He used those to reassure the public, stabilize the banking system, and project just a sense of calm and leadership. We got this.
Oh, absolutely. Clear, decisive communication is so powerful, especially in these moments.
Yeah.
Another great example is Mario Draghi's "whatever it takes" speech during the Eurozone crisis.
Oh, right.
Just those 3 words
Yeah.
calmed the financial markets almost instantly.
Oof. Like magic.
Yeah.
But when that credibility is lacking, the consequences can be severe.
True.
Japan's delayed response to its real estate crash in the 1980s, for example.
Yes.
That led to decades of economic stagnation.
It did. It's a stark reminder that even with the best intentions, sometimes a lack of clear communication and decisive action can prolong the pain, make the recovery much, much harder.
So knowing all of this, are we just doomed to repeat these mistakes?
I don't know.
Linda Yu raises a particularly concerning point about China.
She does.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, China's property market,
Yes,
it's showing some really alarming parallels to past crashes.
it is.
And we're talking property prices exceeding even Manhattan.
Wow.
A heavily indebted property sector accounting for 29% of China's national output.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And there's this concerning lack of transparency, like what's really going on?
And a potential crash in China, given its size and influence in the global economy, that could have repercussions far beyond its borders.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially for developing countries that rely heavily on those Chinese loans.
Right, exactly.
And this raises a big question about the Chinese government's credibility in a potential crisis. Can they really inspire the confidence needed to navigate a potential meltdown? Their political system with its limited transparency and public accountability.
Yeah.
It's vastly different from those Western democracies that have faced similar situations.
Right.
So it remains to be seen how they would handle such a situation.
It's a complex and potentially worrying situation. But before we delve deeper into those potential risks in China, I kind of want to rewind a bit and take a closer look at the dot-com bubble.
Okay.
It was such a time of just incredible innovation, but also just rampant speculation.
It was.
It's such a fascinating case study in how quickly things can unravel,
Yes.
even when everybody seems totally convinced that this time is different.
Absolutely. And the dot-com bubble, it really offers some valuable lessons on how investor exuberance and the allure of the next big thing
The next big thing.
can create a dangerous disconnect from actual market fundamentals. We saw companies with sky-high valuations just implode almost overnight
Oh, yeah.
when the reality of their business models just couldn't keep up with the hype.
Yeah, it's like the hype train just derailed.
It
It
did.
went right off the tracks. I remember thinking at the time, how could people be so blinded by this hype? But then again, the internet was so new
It was.
and exciting. The possibilities seemed endless. It was easy to get swept up in all that frenzy.
And that's precisely what makes those euphoric phases so dangerous.
Yeah.
It's so hard to resist the pull of the crowd.
The pull.
Yeah, especially when everyone seems to be getting rich.
Right. But even in all that chaos, some companies came out stronger.
They did.
Take Amazon, for example.
Oh, yeah, Amazon.
They navigated that dot-com crash by staying so laser-focused on building a sustainable business, even when other companies were just burning through cash.
They were. It was alarming the rate they were burning through it. But Jeff Bezos's approach, during that period, it just highlights the importance of a sound strategy
Okay.
and just financial discipline, even amidst a speculative frenzy. He was willing to invest in the future, but he kept a close eye on that bottom line.
Yeah.
And it paid off big time.
It's interesting, though, isn't it?
What's that?
Many of those dot-com entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
even if your company's failed,
Uh-huh.
they bounced back.
It did.
They learned from their mistakes, started new ventures, and ultimately came out ahead.
True. But, the average investor who rode that NASDAQ roller coaster during that time saw their portfolios decimated.
Oh, man.
It took years for that tech-heavy index to recover to its pre-bubble peak.
Right?
And a lot of people, they lost everything, their life savings.
And that underscores, a key point from Linda Yu's book.
Yeah.
While some individuals, they might profit really handsomely from these market cycles, crashes often have just these devastating consequences
They do.
for the broader economy and everyday people.
Yes.
The Great Depression is like this stark reminder of that.
It is.
The stock market crash triggered this whole chain reaction, leading to bank failures, widespread unemployment, and just years of economic hardship for millions of people.
Years.
Years of hardship.
It's hard to imagine.
So how do we break this cycle?
I don't know.
How do we prevent these crashes from happening, or at least mitigate their impact?
Right.
Linda Yu argues that understanding the history of these crashes and recognizing those recurring patterns is crucial if we want to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past.
Makes sense.
She emphasizes the importance of regulation, particularly when it comes to the banking system, to ensure financial stability. But she also stresses that just having these rules in place isn't enough. It's that human element, that element of credibility that really makes a difference. Leaders need to inspire confidence, act decisively, and communicate clearly in times of crisis. Think of it as like a trust equation.
Okay.
When trust is eroded, whether in a particular company, a sector, or even in an entire economic system, the consequences can be dire. So what does all this mean for us, the everyday investors trying to navigate these really turbulent financial waters?
Right.
What can we do to protect ourselves?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Well, Linda Yu's work reminds us that staying informed, being aware of the risks, and just approaching investment decisions with a healthy dose of skepticism can make a world of difference. Don't get caught up in the hype.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask tough questions like, wait a minute, what's really going on here?
Due diligence.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, by learning from the past, we can break this whole cycle of booms and busts and create a more stable and equitable financial future.
That would be amazing. It's a challenge for sure, but understanding those forces at play is a crucial first step.
Yeah, it's that first step.
It is. It's like that old saying, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That's especially true when it comes to financial markets.
Yeah, it's so easy to just get caught up in the excitement of a bull market. You just kind of forget that, Well, what goes up must come down.
Exactly. And that's why Linda Yu, she stresses the importance of diversification. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Spread your investments across different asset classes.
Different industries.
Yeah, different industries and even different geographic regions.
You're saying don't just ride the wave of whatever's hot at the moment.
Right, because when that bubble bursts, you could be left holding the bag.
Yeah, you're stuck with it.
You are. And another crucial piece of advice, do your research. Understand what you're actually investing in. Don't just blindly follow the crowd or buy into the hype.
It's like that saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. We need to be wary of those promises of, unrealistic returns.
Yeah, they're often the first to just crumble when the market turns.
They fall apart.
They do. And remember, debt can magnify losses. So be cautious about taking on too much leverage, especially when markets are looking frothy.
Leverage, for those who might not be familiar with the term, basically means using borrowed money to invest.
Right.
It can really amplify your gains if things go well,
Sure.
but it can also amplify your losses if things go south.
Oh, yeah. And when markets are at all-time highs, like they were before, the dot-com bubble burst or the housing market collapsed in 2008, it's often a sign that things are getting a little overheated and a correction is likely on the horizon.
So we need to be extra cautious during those times of, exuberance. Right?
Exactly. It's during those times that it's most important to remember those lessons of history.
The history.
Approach investment decisions with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Like, hold on a second. Let's think about this.
Yes.
So it's not just about understanding those economic forces at play.
Right.
It's also the psychological factors.
Oh, for sure.
The fear and the greed that can drive those market swings.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Linda Yu's book so valuable. Yeah. It's not just some, dry economic analysis. It's like a fascinating exploration of human emotion and behavior that shape these cycles of boom and bust.
It's like a financial thriller. It's full of suspense.
It is.
Intrigue.
You can't put it down.
Yeah, you just can't. And the key takeaway, as you've said, is that we're not doomed to repeat these mistakes.
Hopefully not.
By understanding the patterns of the past, recognizing those warning signs, and by making these informed investment decisions,
Yes.
we can hopefully create a more stable and just, equitable financial future.
That's the goal.
It's a future where crashes, if they do happen, they're less devastating.
Right.
And recovery is swifter and more inclusive.
Absolutely. It's a goal worth striving for, one that requires, I think, a collective effort.
Collective effort.
Yeah, and a commitment to learning from the lessons that history has, so painfully taught us.
So it's almost like we need this pre-flight checklist
Oh, yeah.
for our finances,
Yeah,
especially when the markets are just like soaring.
that's a great analogy. And what would be on this checklist?
Yeah.
Well, Linda Yu gives us some pretty clear pointers. First, diversify, don't put all your eggs in one basket, spread the risk.
Makes total sense. Spreading that risk is always smart, no matter what the market conditions are. What else should we be looking out for?
Do your homework. Really understand what you're investing in. Don't get swept up by all the hype. Like, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
It probably is. So many people got burned during that dot-com bubble because they bought into these companies that had no real business model.
Yeah. Yeah, no real plan. And remember, debt can be a really dangerous game. Be careful about using too much leverage, especially when markets are, looking kind of bubbly.
For our listeners who might not be familiar with that term, leverage basically means using borrowed money to invest,
Yeah.
which can magnify those gains,
Sure.
but it can also magnify your losses if things go south.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
adding fuel to a fire.
Oh, yeah.
If the market goes your way, you can make a killing. But if it turns against you, those losses can be just devastating.
It sounds like Linda Yu's book is a must-read for anyone who wants to navigate these, turbulent financial waters.
It is. It really is. And it's not just a dry economic textbook. It's a
Right.
really captivating exploration of the human psychology that's behind these market cycles. You'll find yourself nodding along. You recognize your own emotions, your own behaviors reflected in the stories of those past crashes.
It's like, oh, I've done that. Oh, I felt that.
Exactly.
So it's not just about understanding the numbers.
Right.
It's also understanding ourselves.
Right. Absolutely.
Our own tendencies towards that fear and greed.
Precisely. And that's what makes Linda Yu's work so powerful. It helps us to see ourselves a little more clearly, which can then empower us to make more informed and rational decisions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of financial crashes, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners? You know, it's the one thing they should remember long after this episode is over.
I think it's this. We're not powerless. We don't have to be victims of these cycles. By understanding the patterns of the past, by recognizing those warning signs, and by approaching our investment decisions with a healthy dose of skepticism and a commitment to lifelong learning, we can create a more stable and secure financial future for ourselves and for generations to come.
For generations to come. So if you found this deep dive valuable, be sure to subscribe and tell a friend. And join us next time for another fascinating journey into the world of knowledge and ideas.